All right. So the Dolphins is trying to figure out a lot of their stuff this off season. I was like, fired McDaniels. I was like, got in a, a team of Packers and the GM and Halfley as the coach. Which I mean, most of the time I was like, somebody you always do. There is always most of the time a team coming in or whatever. Uh, I'm trying to think. I'm like outside of like Buffalo, where it was like McDermott and Bean, where they both came from, the Panthers. Trying to think of how many other spots where it was like they both came from the same place and not them just having a relationship in general. But anyway, uh, so I was like, I'm going to talk about how I feel about the offseason that's going on, and also, uh, resident of Miami, Dan Libertard and the whole crew of the show. And I was like, I will start off with that because I think that will go and help with the rest of how the offseason is going. So basically, I was like, Dan Libertard was throwing it to his crew. I like Greg Cody and all of them about how giving out. I was like getting rid of Tyree, getting rid of Bradley Chubb, and having to figure out what they're going to do with Tua and stuff, and how bleak the situation is. There's not. I was like, you don't have any picks to show for it because it's like you didn't get anything for any of them, while also trading picks to get rid of them. That you're sort of in a bleak situation of starting over. Like there's no players outside of like really H-Hand and Waddle that anybody knows or cares about. That there's no top pick in this draft really. There's to where you can start something over. Um, that basically this is the bleakest it's been in Dolphins history in a long time. And Greg Cody is basically on the other side saying that there's hope, that getting rid of Greer, the GM, is a big step. Uh, I was like that they're cleaning house, that the purpose and all this other stuff that basically like even though right now, yes, there's nothing here that hey, there is something. I'm like, there's something to look. I was like, there is brightness at the end of the tunnel. Levitar going back and saying that while it's like the move they didn't mean nothing. That there was not that there's nothing to show for it and whatnot. So that's really a simple version of it. That was like you easily go see on their thing. I want to say it's probably about 12 minutes or so, but I feel like that's a quick synopsis of the whole thing. Now, I was like, what I'll say in the counteracting of all their stuff is like this is not the bleakest time it is to be a Dolphins fan. I was like another thing he's talking about that they do this constantly of like rebuilding and stuff. And I don't like I don't know. I don't feel like it's the bleakest. Obviously, I was here when they was like they had to win a game at the very last game of the year. Otherwise, they were about to have a defeated season, or whatever. Where it was the Cleo Lemon and the Cleo Lemon gang, where it was just kind of like, what are we doing here, squad? I was like, where I think their best receiver was like Camparo or whatever. I forget the dude's name. Where there was no good players on that squad. And I was like, or would you have rather had like teams where it was like Bill Parcells with the Wildcat, where they were just mediocre enough to feel like you were going to be able to do something. Uh, I was like the David Garrard years. I was like, was fine, but I was like, we basically got Jacksonville's cast off a quarterback. But I was like, that still was better than I was like Chad Pennington. Hey, good time with the Wildcat, but the Henny was just kind of like meh. I was like the Beck years, meh. Even the Tannehill years, I was like was man. Didn't like that at all. I like they drafted Tua. I didn't like that pick at all. But you know what? That I was like, I will say that outside of the Wildcat, and this is why I'm like it wasn't the bleakest, is because this was probably actually the most fun of being I was like of a Dolphins team. Think about it. I was like, you had like a basically a fast court team. You were basically going fast as you can, balls to the wall. I was like, it was speed, speed, speed on everything, and it was real. I was like this year, I was like, hey, I was like, they played tough the second half of the year, but the first half was horrible. The year before that, I was like, it was kind of cringe with a lot of the stuff. Year before that, hey, I was like couldn't beat Buffalo or whatever, but hey, it was still good for like 2.5, 2, 3 years in that middle time. And I was like, hey, getting Tyreek Hill was a start of it. We don't really get top players. I was like, so going for that, I'm like, guess what? It helped McDaniels and the team that he wanted to play. I was like, we got a superstar type of player. I was like, that doesn't happen being a part of the Dolphins. You don't. I was like, even though it was the sorry general manager that we got, doing a move like that doesn't really happen. I was like getting Chubb. I was like when it was like, oh, I was like, cause he sort of made fun. I was like, Levidar made fun of getting Chubb and being like, we're a piece away, and it's like we sort of actually like was a lot like did I have anything of like we're going to win and necessarily beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? No. I was like Josh Allen, hey, give them a run for their money. I was like play them close, probably not. I was like even the Ravens, probably not. But I was like we had the problem of not being able to play in cold winter games. It's crazy. You know what's crazy? What's crazy is this second half of this year, Mike McDaniel's team, if we had any of this team with any of those years, we would have did a lot better. I'm not saying that like over here like a Super Bowl, but I'm saying we might have won a playoff game. It's the fact that we basically the whole finesse thing was going on for so long that came to MO that's like cold weather. They can't run really. I was like really run the ball the way you need to when it's wintry type games and all that stuff. They did that this year, and if you had that in some of them other years, might at least been able to pull out at least a division win. Because I was like, we had the division and lost in basically the second half of the year, and also when we lost to the Bills and stuff like that, and they were like 2, 3 games behind, ran us all up. And also, I don't understand how it could be the bleakest time when Tua, who was somebody that was there, was part of the tanking process where they was getting rid of so many people that I'm like, I was like, I didn't mind it, but that's how I will play on the Madden game. But it's kind of different in the NFL where it's like you literally are getting rid of all your top players and not really bringing back anything of really quality. You're just like, nope, bye, or whatever. That's another bleak time. But going on with now, I'm like, look, they got rid of the GM, what I felt like was always the biggest problem with the Dolphins, that he stayed for so long, and it was just kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Because even when I was like, because even then I was like, I didn't understand what we were doing. Where it's like, all right, cool. I was like, we got Jalen Ramsey. Why? Okay, now, okay, we're going to give him a contract. Okay, now we're going to trade him to the Steelers. Why? Well, I was like, well, he doesn't make any point here, right? There's no sense in him being here. Okay, we're gonna bring back Micah back. Okay. I was like, we're gonna trade Jalen Phillips. Hey, not really necessarily against that. We're not gonna trade Chubb. Okay. Odd, but I was like, all right. It seemed like we're sort of doing like a half sale thing here. Okay. I was like, I would have traded Tyreek Hill before this. I was like, the season really got going. Still would have traded him before he got hurt. But at least when he got hurt, that's when they was sort of trying to turn it around or whatever. But hey, it is what it is. Uh, Point being that I'm like, hey, there was a lot of stuff that I did not understand. I was like, I thought that the team should have been doing a lot more on defense. They didn't. I was like, offense after those, that first year that they sort of went with Jackson and Hunt, and then Hunt had to go and stuff. All right, cool. It is what it is. But we got that out the way. So you got a general manager that's connected to a head coach. So that means they're tight. They're right here. Cool. We got that. That's one thing that you got that's solid. No matter how this goes, that a plan that they're both tied together. And I think that's a lot better than a lot of other situations that they normally have. With that being said, hey, if we're going to do this, they came from the Packers. And I'm like, if anything, there's a way and a philosophy that they got there that may or may not work here, but there's a philosophy you can look at and be like, all right, organization where they do things like this, I'm a lot more on board. If they came from Cleveland, it's suspect. If they if they came from the Jets, huh? If it was a retread of something else, why? You get what I'm saying? So it's like I'm like, okay, I can at least see something there. And at worst, I'm like, hey, they're going to have to figure out this cap thing. But I'm like, hey, if they get a Malik Willis and a Romeo Dobbs, I'm like, bet I was like, we got a decent placeholder at quarterback with the potential of going up. Uh, but I was like, probably won't be no crazy money into it. Where it's like, yes, you're gonna have to sign them for some money to come over there. But it's also not something where I'm like, oh, about getting out of. And you have I was like, a pretty good receiver that I like showed moments and stuff like that. But outside, if you keep Waddle, then I'm like, he's a good number two, maybe number three if you draft a receiver type of player. Cool. And then not even to say some of the other people like I think Rashad Gary like a free agent and stuff like so I'm like at least I understand that I'm like, hey, I was like, I see how they do receivers. I was like, I see how they sort of like do corners. I like some of them don't really working out, but they keep drafting corners. Hey, I'm like, hey, they at least got some way of staying on pack. So I think that's somewhat of why it's like optimism in that regard. Now I was like, can you be mad about they got rid of Tyreek Hill, they got rid of Bradley Chubb? Not really, just because I'm like those players wasn't going like other teams also like from like and this sort of what gets me when like and not just like retarded, but I was like any fans sort of talk about like, well, we couldn't get nothing for him. We couldn't even get a fifth or a sixth, and it's like, well, yeah, sure, but if you're already getting that much of a low picks, that's like during the season, that's one thing, but in the off season, I'm like, yo, you might as well just cut and just try to just get the money or whatever, because other teams also know like, what are you doing here? Like you're going to just basically get rid of. Like Tyreek Hill, that sort of was just obvious that that's going to be cut. Nobody's going to want to bring on his contract, which is another thing. They'll be trading basically for the contract and giving up a pick. Nobody's going to do that. We'd rather just sign them up outright ourselves, fit them into our own salary cap. They're not. They're not that type of a player. And you waited too long on the Bradley Chubb thing. Tyreek Hill, you didn't know he was going to get hurt. It is what it is. If you didn't get rid of him after he got the captain removed off of him, kind of thing. But at this point, it is what it is. I would like go ahead and cut the money. Now, what do you do at this point with Tua Tagovailoa? He's not going to rework his deal. But do you just say screw it and have him play this year? Do you say screw it and cut him to where uh you have it spread out his cap over 2 years? Do you just do it all in 1 year? I was like, obviously, this is something they got to do. How much money will they be able to play with, depending on which one of these things? Obviously, if it's half and half. And I was like, I seen somebody talking. I was like, Danny Parks, I think on like first things first. Uh, this is essentially a version of tanking for the NFL, which I was like, I think I'm totally fine with as a Dolphin fan. I'm like, okay, cool. And I don't mean taking like how, and because to me, this is not taking in the same way they did few years ago. To me, this one is like, you are just bad. You are just bad. It is what it is. You don't really have a way of turning this team around to make it competitive in such a way that make that makes sense in a way of like not saying that you're not trying, but I'm saying there's no instance, there's no New England Patrioting this. There's no Seattle Seahawks. We just get a quarterback in doing this. Like, no, this is just really going to be get get people who sort of need a like a reclamation, like or like revitalize their career, take flyers out on somebody type of team this year. See who's good, see who's it almost is like how the Commanders did the first year with Jaden, where it was like, hey, they got like Jeremy Chan, they got Lufu, they did picked up a couple people. They brought a couple people over. Dan Quinn brought some people over from the Cowboys that couldn't start over there, but hey, you got a chance to start here. I was like, you signed a couple castaway people, and hey, some of it clicks and some of it works. I was like, that's pretty much what's going to be here. I'm like, who are you going to do that's like, hey, maybe they're coming off an injury and they got to rehab themselves, or somebody that's, hey, I was like, you had a down year, come over here. Guess what? We'll sign you for a short contract. Boom, guess what? Get your numbers up. If I was like, we sign you back, we sign you back. If not, hey, good. I was like, go get your money. That's just going to have to be. I was like trading something like, see if you could get a Kayvon Thibodeau for the. I would like for the low. I was like maybe for like a second round pick or something like that. I'm like that to me. That's a pretty decent investment. Than just necessarily drafting somebody. You go get. I would like get somebody like him. Uh, Trying to say, I was like, we're good at we're good at running back. So I was like, there's no need of that there. Um, yeah, but I was like, you're just going to have to sign people who just is either getting cut or something like that. Like CJ Garner Johnson, guess what? He needs a place to play. Come over here, be our safety. I'm like, yeah, there might be people that you could go snag. Like maybe you could put in for like a Reed Blankenship. I was like, he's still quite young. Um, I was like, trying to think of his name from like I was like Caden over there with Atlanta, the linebacker. I was like you could get a couple pieces here and there while still being in the spot to lose. Now, let's go to the Tua situation. Me, I think that I like what I would do. I would just go ahead and just cut all this money this year, try to figure out what we could do on the margins. Like I said, you're just gonna have to bring in some scrap heat type of people or whatever. Like there's still people out there that maybe that might like look, I just seen that. I was like, Artie Burns is still playing. I'm like, there's still people out there that you can sort of just like snag up. Yes, it might be a team of just draft picks, undrafted free agents, whatever it is, but go ahead, do that this year. Find a couple diamonds in the rough that could be on the cheap that yes, you can sign next year for cheap. But guess what? You are done with it. I sort of do it to where I'm just like, look, I ain't trying to owe anybody money. So I'd rather sort of get this paid off than trying to do some. We're gonna pay this off in like 18 payments of like two. Like, no, I'm going to try to pay this all off, so I ain't got to worry about this in the future. And that's how I sort of feel about what trying to do this Tua thing. Is like, nah, let's go ahead and just get all of this off the books all in 1 year. We're going to be bad with him, without him, splitting it up. We're going to be bad either way. But how about we can set ourselves up with some good picks, and then next year all the cap space to make all the mistakes that we sort of need to figure out if we're going to have a good team or not. It's like it is sort of New England esque, where it's like, hey, they were all bad. It was a bunch of young players, and guess what? They came into the next year with money to spend, and they spent that money. Yes, they had the quarterback at least, but hey, the Dolphins is going to be picking next year, someone to draft. It's supposed to have a little bit more quarterbacks. And if I'm like, look, depending on who they pick up if they pick up somebody at quarterback this year, I don't know if I'm all that intrigued either about like, yes, if you get Arch, that's going to sell tickets and everybody's going to love it. But outside of that, I don't really think any of the quarterbacks are really worth where I'm like, would you just not try to see if Anthony Richardson can pop off for you, or I was like, they're going to try to get Malik Willis or whatever like that. But you get what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather sort of go that route. So I'm like, look, I'm actually, what I think is also easier to be optimistic with this is the fact that you already sort of know it's going to stink. You get what I'm saying? Like, and it doesn't stink in a way that's like how like this year was, where like same old team, same stuff, nothing's changing. We're not gonna do anything different. We didn't add anything. We didn't do anything spectacular. It is what it is. We're not gonna, and we're like we also stopped being an exciting team. At least when it was the Dolphins, it's like, hey, we are gonna put up points or something. Like, we stopped being exciting, and then you couldn't even do that. Not even just exciting, you couldn't even really put up the point. Now it's just like, okay, now this is just sad, but we're also not sorry either. Like, the Jets are sorry and sad, but it's like, well, we're going to have some top picks to get some type of time. It's like, we weren't even that. You're sort of in the middle. It's like, where it's like this year, it's like, hey, we're starting over and we're starting over or whatever. Like, you're not like, we know the season we're about to have. So it's going in the class. You're like, yo, if I make a C, that's what I'll take. And then you come out that thing with an A, feels totally different. Like, if we go in here and we're like, hey, it's not gonna be that great. We're probably gonna have a top 5 pick next year, and it comes out and you just like, man, we won. I was like 8 games and we was in the thick of it for a little bit. Like, this year, it's like, oh, like, if we would have had a little bit of that mixed in throughout the year, it would have probably felt a little bit better. If it would have been like 3-game losing streak, 6-game winning streak, 2-game, it would have been a little bit better than just the whoo, we're sorry here. Um, so I have a little bit more optimism. I'm actually sort of excited to see like what moves can be made with the philosophy that they got to basically like, oh, and I was like, man, maybe because it feels a little bit Madden-esque, where it's like, all right, cool, we're gonna clear the books, whoever comes a free agent, and we're gonna just see what magical stuff happens there. Um, yeah, so I think it's a little bit more exciting, especially than the tanking version that we had with Brian Flores. Like, that one just seemed like all types of just bad, where it's just like, ugh, like, I don't know what we're kind of doing here. But anyway, let me know how y'all all feel about it. I was like, do you feel a little bit more optimistic? Like, basically that we got the Packers crew. That's really what it is. Anyway, let me know. Peace. I'm out.